We all make mistakes as Airbnb hosts, but the best thing we can try to do is not make the same mistake again by learning. And here in Positano, Italy, I just witnessed a host lose nearly $2,000 over a mistake that hosts all over the world are making. One that you're probably making too, and has everything to do with your calendar. We all have one, so we can all make this mistake. I'm going to teach you how to make thousands more dollars every single month with a house, hundreds more dollars every single month with a studio apartment, guaranteed, because if you're making this mistake, it's simple as a couple button clicks a few times a week, and you will absolutely make thousands or tens of thousands of more dollars per year. Can you guess the topic? Of course, it's pricing strategy. By the way, my book is about to come out, The Revenue Manager's Handbook, everything that I could ever teach you in a book on how to manage your prices. Pre-register the link down below to be able to get your book when it goes on sale. Let's set the stage. I'm sitting in an Airbnb that I booked in Positano. It's a 3-bedroom property. It's decently furnished. It has all the things that you'd ever want in Positano, including the plates with the lemons on them. The view from the terrace is absolutely amazing. Sunset is outstanding. And I don't necessarily recommend dragging over 100 pounds of luggage upstairs by yourself, but I needed the workout. There's a lot of pasta here in Italy, and I was overdue for a gym session. But in this very same condo that I booked a property, there's a host that lost my booking. Today's a Tuesday. I booked this property for 3 days on weekdays. Of course, it's booked on the weekends. It's June here in Positano, and this is the season. People are coming throughout the summer. Everybody's making crazy money, 400 euros plus per night, easy, even on the smallest properties. But on weekdays, even in season, you're not guaranteed to get bookings. The way that we can make this math is to look at it this way. If Positano needed roughly 5,000 units of both hotels and homes for people to stay in Airbnbs on the most in-demand days, which would be Fridays and Saturdays, maybe Thursdays, maybe Sundays, well then on the less in-demand days, there's going to be leftover inventory if Positano was able to service every single person that wanted to stay here. Now, there's no guarantee. Maybe they have 5,000 rentable units, but 6,000 units of demand. People might stay in a nearby town like Amalfi or Priano, for example, and come into Positano and make that commute. It's possible. So on the weekdays, then maybe there is 5,000 units of demand for Positano. But in this case, that hypothetical doesn't exist. There's actually plenty of inventory available on weekdays in Positano. So I waited till the last minute to see what I could get for what prices, and for weekdays last minute in Positano, there was over 100 available listings within the price range that I was willing to pay. And for 3 nights, a lot of listings were $900 to $1,200. A lot of people were massaging their prices a little bit, even hotels were coming down. You could go to Priceline and see that there were still some listings left that were getting slashed available through Priceline, but not many. After maybe a dozen listings, everything that was available was farther away cities. But on Airbnb, still ballpark 100 listings available. I decided that I've seen enough of the usual, so I wanted to find something that had a pool, and I found a condo with a pool, beautiful view, 2-bedroom property, $2,200 for 3 nights. And I thought to myself, $2,200 for 3 nights seems a little rich. I'm not sure if I want to do that. And I looked around for maybe 20 more minutes and I found another listing, this very listing. Now this listing's a 3-bedroom, not a 2-bedroom. Sleeps the same number of people, generally the same, and then lo and behold, there it is, the exact same pool. I'm like, wow, this is the same condo complex. But this listing was just over $1,600 for 3 nights instead of $2,200. Now here's the thing, if I liked the price of that other listing, I would have booked it. I wouldn't have spent all this other time looking for another listing at a more savory price. This listing has slightly lower reviews, which is why it didn't show up in search first. That other one got the first swing of the bat. But because I didn't want to spend over $2,000 for 3 nights, they lost money. And that's the point here. That listing on weekends absolutely is making $700 to $900 per night. Absolutely. But on the weekdays that aren't booked last minute, they made no adjustments to try to get booked. If this listing came down just a little over 10%, to say maybe $1,850, $1,900, low 1900s, I probably still would have booked that property for $300 less than they had listed. But because they wanted to keep their rate at over $700 a night, they got $0 a night. So the morning of arrival, even the early afternoon of the same day of arrival, when I took this little video on Airbnb to show that it was available, it was still unbooked with just a couple hours left to check in. Because they set their price at such a high price, planning to have multiple people stay, like 4 or 5 or 6 people that tend to split the price, they are now out of the price range for other groups of people, like myself, who just plans on paying for it for just me. I don't need 3 or 4 beds, but I would also like the nice nicer place with the pool. They could have got me for over $500 a night, but they lost me at over $700. This listing, being a 3-bedroom, did the right thing. This listing charges more, just like this other competition. They charge $700 to $900 a night on the weekends. They do just fine. But this host realized that last minute he's not going to get 5 or 6 people staying, just highly unlikely. So he dropped his rate to something lower than all of his competition. And that's why he went as low as he did. He didn't go low enough just to beat his neighbor. He went low enough to beat other Airbnb listings around Positano that had similar amenities. The person was absolutely competitive. He did honestly go lower than he needed to get me to book, considering there are very few listings with pools, but I'm not going to split hairs. He still got over $1,600 from me. And maybe if it wasn't me and it was another customer, and I hypothetically did not exist, maybe his only other shot of getting a booking would have been below $1,700 for 3 nights. So maybe he did the right thing, and I was just conveniently willing to pay a little bit more than he dropped to. And the moral of the story is you cannot nail your price. You're not going to get it perfect every time. He doesn't get to chat with me and go, hey, what's your budget? And then raise his price maybe $200 or $300. He doesn't get that option. He has to play the game, The Price is Right, if you've ever remembered that show. What's the most I can ask for without going over? And if you name a price that is too low in The Price is Right, you can still win, just don't go over. In this case, we don't get a lot of chances for last minute bookings, so he did the right thing. Go lower than you need to. Even if you leave $100 a night on the table, it's still good to get over $500 a night. Collecting 5 is better than collecting 0 because you tried to collect 6. Am I making sense? And you can take this to the bank. You can look at all of the nights that you have that have always been unbooked. You can see the final price that you tried to charge, and we call that your lowest documented attempt. Your listing could be $1,000 a night, but at one point you came down to 6. That would be your lowest documented attempt because it's the lowest listed price in your calendar. I would say that your lowest documented attempt should be broken down by weekdays or weekends. Because honestly, if you have to go down to $200 to get booked on a Tuesday, you won't have to go down to $200 to get booked on a Saturday. Almost never. So your lowest documented attempt, or the lowest price that you go and still miss, is going to be different for weekdays. If you notice that you only ever go down to $300 on your weekdays, but those days commonly tend to get unbooked when you don't have a booking already, say 2 weeks in advance, well, within 2 weeks, then you need to start dropping below $300 if you want those booked. And that 2-week mark could be hypothetically what we call a zone in my new book, The Revenue Manager's Handbook. Anything inside of 2 weeks, 2 weeks or less to get booked is pretty last minute for a house. And you may not want to get there without a booking. You may find that anybody booking within 2 weeks that they're rude, they do damages, they try to third parties. So you may decide that you want to get all of your bookings 2 weeks out or longer. So you may find that 2 months out, you're trying to get $500 a night for weekdays, $1,000 for weekends, and you almost get 50% occupied there. And then inside of 2 months, you go from 5 and 1,000 down to 350 and 700, and you get another 25% booked there. But inside of a month, you don't get any more bookings. That 50% at full rate and the 25% at almost full rate, you're at 75%, and then there's no action inside of 30 days. The next thing you could do is inside of 30 days, start slashing prices again, maybe $200 or $250 for weekdays and $450 or $500 for weekends. Hypothetically, again, results may vary by property size or region or market or seasonality. Here in Positano, the likelihood of somebody throwing a house party is extremely low. There's not people flying here, spending thousands of dollars on flights, and then spending money on buses and trains and private transport to get here to do something foolish like that. There's a cost to get to Positano. So dropping your prices even as low as $150 to $250 per night last minute is still going to be just fine because the cost to get to the city alone is already restrictive of throwing parties. Does that make sense? So you can have a conversation with yourself about these risks and decide what your tolerance is, and decide how realistic is it that somebody's actually going to throw a party in your city or in your town or your destination. If it's Philadelphia, I learned the hard way that charging less than $100 on any property of any size at any timeline was a risk of somebody throwing a party. But in the middle of the mountains or somewhere like Oklahoma, the only people throwing a party are the people all driving to congregate together. And as long as you do that in a controlled way, Those fratty people that spend thousands of dollars a night to throw a little house party with just their friends, a group of 14 to 20 people, you may still welcome that, and they're booking months in advance. So not only does price not restrict that, but lead time doesn't either. There's no avoiding that party by price, because the people that can afford your place and don't party, they don't book any differently than the people that can afford your place and will party. There's no way to change behavior with price. So in summary, this host knows a few things. He knows his market, meaning he knows he can drop his price last minute and be safe. He also knows how the law of size works for groups. Bigger groups book further in advance, so he can charge more at a higher lead time. But he also didn't gut his rate, not to the very, very bottom. He still kept it at 500 plus per night, which means that he understands his season and that he's still just as likely to get booked at 500 bucks as he is to get booked at 300 bucks. Sometimes charging too little is just charging too little. If it was winter season, I bet this guy goes down to $200 per night on his weekdays, and he does it way farther in advance because he's out of season. Just maybe I'll come back and check with this host in 5 months and see if that's the case, because it could be. And this brings the conversation back to the rest of us. What do you do in your market? Are you in the middle of the woods or the inner city, or are you on a beach, on an island somewhere? Are you in a high rise? And what has your experience been dropping your prices last minute? How low do you need to go? And how low is too much? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching this video, as always, and I'll see you on the other side.